A millionaire saw his fiancée tear up his daughter's drawing for the nanny and is left stunned. Jonathan Hayes was a name that appeared constantly in business magazines, praised as one of Silicon Valley's pioneering minds. The apps he created reshaped the way people communicated, shopped, and connected in the digital age. Office buildings bearing his company's logo stretched across major cities, and whenever he appeared at conferences, Jonathan was welcomed like a celebrity. Before the cameras, he always wore the confident smile of a man who had reached the top. But behind that image lay a silence few knew about. 5 years earlier, a car accident had taken away the wife he loved most. That day left a permanent crack in Jonathan's heart. Since then, he poured all of his strength into work, as if lines of code and massive projects could cover the emptiness within. The world saw the explosion of his career, but no one realized it was fueled by grief. Through it all, one thing kept Jonathan from collapsing: Emma. She was only 8, with bright blue eyes that viewed the world with endless curiosity and imagination. Her colorful drawings filled the cold house with life. Emma was the reason Jonathan woke up each morning, the reason he kept pushing forward despite overwhelming pressure. Yet constant busyness also made him a father who was often absent. Endless meetings and flights consumed most of his time. Though Jonathan tried to be present for important moments, there were many nights when Emma was left alone with blank paper and her box of crayons. Thankfully, by her side was always Sofia Martinez, the nanny Jonathan had hired when Emma was very young. Sofia was never just an employee. Coming from a modest immigrant family, she carried both resilience and kindness. She prepared meals, read bedtime stories, and patiently listened as Emma described her imaginative drawings. To Emma, Sofia was not a babysitter, but a true friend. Her presence filled the void Jonathan could not cover. But Jonathan, lost in his work and ambition, had yet to recognize the immense value of that bond. He did not know that the love between Emma and Sofia would soon become the key to a truth he would be forced to face. If Jonathan carried the weight of billion-dollar deals and endless meetings on his shoulders, Emma lived in a completely different world, a world of colors and imagination. Her bedroom on the upper floor of the glass mansion looked like a miniature art gallery. On the walls, dozens of sheets of paper were taped side by side. Little cottages in green fields, smiling suns, or whimsical characters holding hands in joyful scenes. To adults, they were nothing more than the clumsy sketches of a child. But to Emma, each drawing was a story, a way to express feelings she could not yet put into words. It was also her way of holding on to the memory of her late mother. In many of her pictures, there appeared a gentle woman holding the hand of a little girl. The lines were simple, yet the emotion behind them was unmistakable. Whenever he had time, Jonathan would sit by his daughter, take each page in his hands, and say, "This is wonderful, sweetheart." He stored many of them in folders, as if trying to preserve every moment she shared with him. But the truth was, most of the time he wasn't home. It was Sofia who stood witness to Emma's daily creativity. Every afternoon, as the sunset spilled through the wide glass windows, Emma sat at her desk, spreading out her crayons and beginning a new adventure. "Look, Sofia, I drew a flying cat," she would exclaim, holding up a sheet smudged with colors. Sofia bent down patiently, smiling warmly. "That's amazing, Emma. This must be the happiest cat in the world." That simple attention made Emma feel understood. To her clear blue eyes, Sofia was not just an adult supervising her, but a true friend, someone who listened and cherished the little fragments of her young soul. To Jonathan, Emma's drawings were signs of creativity. But Sofia knew better. Behind each stroke of color hid deeper feelings: the longing for her mother, the hunger for love, and the dream of a complete family. Jonathan's life, long accustomed to the relentless pace of business, began to change on an autumn evening when he attended a fundraising gala for startup ventures. Amid sparkling lights and polite laughter, he met Vanessa Clark. She appeared in a dazzling gown, her graceful smile and confident aura drawing every gaze in the room. Vanessa quickly captivated Jonathan with her charm, her conversations about art and fashion, and her flawless appearance down to the smallest detail. For a man who had endured loss and built walls around himself, Vanessa's presence felt like a fresh breeze. She made him believe he could start a new chapter, a new family. In the eyes of the media, Vanessa was the perfect match for Jonathan. They appeared together at events, praised as a power couple. Yet within the private walls of the glass mansion, the story was entirely different. From the very beginning, Emma sensed the distance. Vanessa often smiled when Jonathan was present, but that smile vanished quickly when it was just her and the child. Instead of gentle words, Vanessa spoke to Emma in a condescending tone, as though instructing an underling rather than conversing with an 8-year-old girl. With Sofia, Vanessa's attitude was even clearer. Polite in front of Jonathan, she turned cold and dismissive when he was away. Many times Sofia tried to keep the atmosphere calm, but it was obvious that her presence irritated Vanessa. Jonathan, however, seemed oblivious. To him, Vanessa was the woman who had helped him open his heart again after years of grief. He believed her presence would bring balance to Emma, filling the void left by his late wife. Vanessa Clark tried to appear gentle in front of the crowd, but in her daily life, her impatience was evident. She forced a smile, spoke to the little girl in a condescending tone, and often treated Sofia Martinez with coldness. It was all subtle but noticeable. Emma Hayes, sensitive as she was, caught every detail. She preferred hiding in her room with her box of crayons rather than sitting in the living room listening to Vanessa giving orders to the staff. That Friday afternoon, the mansion was particularly lively. Decorators were coming and going, preparing the space for the upcoming engagement party. Vanessa paced around with a clipboard in her hand, adjusting flowers, criticizing arrangements, and deciding on every detail. "I want this rug replaced. It doesn't match the curtains. And what about these candles?" No, put them out," she said firmly, as if she were already the mistress of the house. Sofia led Emma down the hallway, trying to keep the girl away from the chaos. Emma clutched her box of crayons and a blank sheet of paper, ready to start a new drawing. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go to the garden. You can draw peacefully there." Emma smiled and ran to the stone table beneath the tree. She spread out her crayons, rested her chin on her hands, and began to imagine what to draw. Sofia watched her with tender eyes. "You never get tired of drawing, do you?" "No," Emma replied eagerly. "Each picture is a story." Sofia was moved by that innocence. To her, those childish strokes were more than just a hobby. They were a need to be heard, to express herself. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Vanessa received compliments from a friend who had come to help. "You're about to marry one of the most powerful men in the city, Vanessa. Your life together will be like a fairy tale." Vanessa smiled, but her gaze reflected calculation rather than romance. "A fairy tale, yes, as long as everything goes my way." By late afternoon, Jonathan Hayes returned home. His elegant suit was slightly wrinkled after a long day, but his smile appeared when he saw his daughter in the garden. "Emma," he called, opening his arms. She ran to him, and he lifted her up. "Daddy, today I'll draw something really beautiful." "And I'll keep it just like always," Jonathan said, kissing her forehead. Sofia smiled at the scene, but when she glanced toward the mansion's doorway, she caught sight of Vanessa standing from afar, her smile stiff and her gaze unreadable. It was as if there was a silent rivalry, one that Jonathan had yet to notice. That night, when the house was quiet and Emma had fallen asleep with her box of crayons beside her, Jonathan and Vanessa sat talking in the living room. "The party must be perfect," she said, swirling her wine glass. "What matters is that everyone sees us as a flawless family." Jonathan nodded, unaware of her controlling tone. He truly believed he was rebuilding what he had lost. But in the next room, a little girl was sleeping, her heart already sensing what her father had not yet seen. Not every elegant smile hides kindness behind it. And it would be the contrast between the child's innocence, the nanny's affection, and the coldness of the soon-to-be stepmother that would soon reveal the truth. It was a bright Saturday morning with sunlight streaming through the tall glass windows of the house. Emma woke up with a clear determination. Today, she would draw something special. Unlike her usual sketches that decorated her bedroom walls, this one would be a gift for Sofia. After breakfast, Emma ran to the stone table beneath the garden tree, carrying her beloved box of crayons. She placed a blank sheet on the table, tilted her head in thought, and began drawing the first lines. Each stroke was like a melody, slow yet filled with feeling. Sofia sat nearby, watching with a gentle smile. "Sofia, today I'm going to draw something beautiful just for you," Emma said, her eyes shining. Sofia paused, surprised. "For me? But why me?" Emma tilted her head, answering with the innocence of a child. "Because you're always with me. You tell me stories, you play with me, and you never let me feel alone. This is my way of saying thank you." Sofia's heart tightened. She bit her lip, holding back tears. She only nodded softly, whispering, "I'll treasure this gift forever." The picture gradually took shape. A little girl holding the hand of a taller woman, both standing under a bright sun. Around them bloomed colorful flowers, and in the corner, Emma wrote in uneven letters, "For the best friend in the world." That was when Vanessa appeared. She wore an elegant dress, even though there were no guests in the house. Walking slowly, she noticed Emma bent over her drawing. "What are you drawing, Emma?" Vanessa asked, her voice sweet but laced with pretense. Emma proudly held up the unfinished sheet. "I'm making a gift for Sofia." For a brief moment, Vanessa's smile froze. Her eyes flickered with irritation. A gift for the nanny? The thought pierced her pride. To her, Sofia was nothing more than a shadow. And yet Emma had chosen to pour her affection into that woman instead of her, the fiancée about to become the girl's legal stepmother. A gift for the nanny? Vanessa's voice turned icy. Sofia stepped out of the house with a glass of orange juice in her hand, just in time to hear the remark. She quickly intervened. "It's only a drawing, Vanessa. Children often do that." But jealousy clouded Vanessa's reason. She strode forward, snatched the sheet from Emma's hands. The child's eyes widened in shock. "Listen, Emma, nannies don't need gifts. They're paid to do their job. You don't need to give them anything." Emma shook her head, her voice trembling. "But she's my friend." In that moment, Vanessa ripped the drawing into pieces. The colorful fragments fluttered to the ground as though a child's heart had been torn apart. Emma burst into tears, scrambling to pick up the scraps. "No, my picture." Sofia knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around the child. "Don't cry, sweetheart. I saw how beautiful it was. That picture will always live in your heart." But her eyes burned with fury as she looked up at Vanessa. Vanessa crossed her arms arrogantly. "It's better she learns to be realistic. This is no place for childish fantasies." Sofia Martinez looked straight at her, furious. "You have no right to do that. It's important to her." Vanessa Clark lifted her chin. "Be quiet, Sofia. Remember your place." The scene became unbearable for Emma Hayes. Through her tears, the little girl ran to her room and locked the door. Sofia hesitated between running after her to comfort her or continuing the confrontation with Vanessa. "You don't understand the harm you've just caused," the nanny said firmly. "A small gesture to you can leave a mark for a child's entire life." "Enough!" Vanessa interrupted, raising her hand. "I will not tolerate being lectured by a servant. Do your job and stay out of family matters." Sofia took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm, though inside her anger burned. Hours later, Emma still refused to come out. She curled up on her bed, clutching her pillow. Sofia quietly entered, sitting beside her. "Do you want to talk, sweetheart?" The girl shook her head, tears still streaming. "I just wanted her to like my drawing." Sofia stroked her hair. "You don't need her approval. The drawing is beautiful, and most importantly, it was made with love. That's something no one can ever tear apart." Emma sniffled, trying to smile. "You're still my friend, right?" Sofia, deeply moved, hugged her tightly. "Always. Nothing will ever change that." Meanwhile, Vanessa walked around the house as if nothing had happened. She gave orders about decorations, made phone calls to friends, and talked about the grandeur of the party. To her, what had just happened was a trivial detail. She had no idea that very soon that detail would become the reason her entire plan would fall apart. That afternoon, Jonathan returned home earlier than usual. After a long day of tense meetings, he decided to leave the office before sunset, hoping to spend a little time with Emma. As his car pulled into the garage, he noticed the house was still buzzing with activity. Decorators at work, Vanessa pacing about with her commanding voice. Jonathan chose to slip in through the side door, as he often did when he wanted to return unnoticed. Walking down the hallway, something unusual caught his attention. Scattered on the floor were crumpled pieces of colored paper. He bent down, picked one up, and immediately recognized the familiar childish strokes of Emma. These were not random scribbles. They were fragments of what had once been a whole drawing. His heart clenched. Clutching the torn scraps, Jonathan quickened his pace. Near the living room, he heard the voices of two women. One was trembling, filled with hurt. Sofia. The other was cold, arrogant. Vanessa. "You didn't have to rip up her drawing," Sofia said, struggling to keep her anger under control. "Stay out of it," Vanessa replied with disdain. "I don't need anyone teaching me how to raise Jonathan's daughter. You're just the help." Jonathan froze at the doorway, unnoticed. Before him stood Sofia, her face tense, eyes burning with protective instinct for Emma, and Vanessa, arms crossed, her gaze sharp and haughty. He needed no more words. With the torn pieces in his pocket and the scene before his eyes, the truth was undeniable. Blood seemed to freeze in his veins. Anger surged, mingled with piercing sorrow. He pictured Emma's innocent face, her bright blue eyes, and what she must have felt watching her gift of love torn to shreds. Jonathan stepped back, inhaling deeply, forcing himself to contain the fury. He knew that bursting out now would only lead to shouting without resolution. He needed the truth from Emma herself. He needed to hear it from her lips. He climbed the staircase, pausing before the small bedroom door. 3 soft knocks. A fragile voice replied, "Come in." Inside, Emma sat on her bed, clutching a pillow tightly, her crayon box spilled open beside her, untouched. Her little face was blotchy, her eyes damp with tears. Jonathan sat down beside her, gently stroking her hair. "Sweetheart, what happened?" he asked softly. Emma hesitated, her throat tight. But then, with the unvarnished honesty of a child, she whispered, "I made a drawing to give to Sofia, but Vanessa tore it up. She said nannies don't get presents." Jonathan Hayes's chest burned. He held his daughter in his arms, kissed her forehead, and let her cry quietly. "You did nothing wrong, Emma. Never believe her words. Your drawing is beautiful, and you have the right to give it to anyone you want." Emma sniffled, confused. "But she's going to marry you, Daddy. She doesn't like me." Those words cut like a knife. Jonathan closed his eyes tightly, holding back tears. "Leave this to me. I promise no one will ever make you feel that way again." That night, Jonathan didn't sleep. He paced in his study, turning over the torn pieces of the drawing he had collected. What was once just paper was now a symbol of his daughter's wounded childhood. He remembered Vanessa Clark's arrogant look, Sofia Martinez's restrained fury, Emma's silent tears. And the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. He had allowed a stranger to take up too much space in their lives. But he would not act in haste. Not this time. He needed to confront Vanessa decisively, leaving no room for easy excuses. He decided the next evening's dinner would be the right moment. At the table, before his daughter and the nanny, he would expose what he knew and hear with his own ears the true face of his fiancée. The next morning at breakfast, Vanessa acted as if nothing had happened. She was neatly dressed, smiled at Jonathan, and talked about the party. But the businessman could hardly look at her. Every word sounded hollow, every gesture rehearsed. Sofia stayed quiet, avoiding eye contact. She knew Jonathan suspected something, but feared being misunderstood. Meanwhile, Emma sat in a corner drawing. Her lines no longer held the joy of the day before. Jonathan silently observed. Everything was clear to him now. It was time to act. That evening's dinner looked, at first glance, like any other. The table sparkled, crystal glasses shone, plates were arranged perfectly. Vanessa tended to every detail, as if staging a performance. But for Jonathan, there was no beauty in this act anymore. His eyes drifted across the table, his mind fixed on one goal, to reveal in front of everyone who the woman he was about to marry truly was. Sofia quietly helped serve. Emma sat beside her father, barely touching her food, avoiding Vanessa's gaze. The fiancée, however, brimmed with confidence. She wore an elegant dress, her hair pinned up with care. She smiled too much, as if desperate to prove to Jonathan she was the ideal partner. "Everything is perfect, don't you think, Jonathan?" She raised her glass. He replied flatly, "Perfect. Overly so." A heavy silence followed. Jonathan leaned on his elbow, looking straight at Vanessa. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday." Her smile faltered for a moment. "Yesterday? What do you mean?" "I mean my daughter's drawing," he answered firmly. Emma lowered her head, her heart racing. Sofia froze with the picture in her hands. Vanessa tried to maintain her composure. "Oh, that! Jonathan, you know children exaggerate. Emma is sweet, but she's also spoiled. She didn't understand your good intentions. You only wanted to teach her that everything has limits." Jonathan didn't answer immediately. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the torn pieces of the drawing, and placed them on the table. The colorful fragments lay there, undeniable evidence. Emma gasped softly. Sofia covered her mouth, fighting back emotion. "Teaching, Vanessa?" Jonathan's voice dropped low. "Teaching by destroying something my daughter made with love?" Vanessa's face hardened. "You have to understand, Jonathan. That child lives in a fantasy world. If she continues, she'll grow up weak, unable to face reality." Jonathan drew a deep breath, suppressing the fire in his chest. "Don't ever speak about her like that." Sofia, silent until then, spoke up. "Forgive me, Mr. Hayes, but I must say, your daughter is not weak. She is sensitive, creative, full of life, and what Vanessa did was crush that right before her eyes." Vanessa snapped toward the nanny, furious. "Shut up! You have no right to defy me in front of my fiancée." Jonathan raised his hand, cutting her off. "She has every right. You have no right to treat my daughter that way." The tension grew. Vanessa tried to regain her composure, but the mask had cracked. "What does this mean? You value the word of a servant more than mine?" "This isn't about that," Jonathan said firmly. "This is about character." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa drew a deep breath and, as if she could no longer pretend, let the poison spill. "Fine. You want the truth? I never wanted to play nanny to a spoiled child. I got engaged for the power of standing beside a wealthy man, not to perform a fake, happy family act." Her words shattered the room like broken glass. Emma shrank in her chair, tears streaming silently. Sofia clenched her napkin, furious. Jonathan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Vanessa," he said, rising to his feet, "our engagement ends here." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "What? You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious. You don't deserve to be in this house, and you certainly don't deserve to be near my daughter." Vanessa shot up, knocking over her glass. "You'll regret this," she screamed, her voice dripping with hatred. "No woman will want a man who listens to a child and a servant." Jonathan didn't respond. He walked to the door, opened it, and pointed outside. "Leave my house, now." Vanessa hesitated, but the unshakable look in his eyes left no room. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door. The silence afterward was almost soothing. Jonathan exhaled deeply and turned back to his daughter. He knelt before her, taking her hand. "Forgive me, Emma. I should never have let someone like her into our lives." The girl still cried, but now with tears of relief. "You'll stay with us, won't you, Daddy?" Jonathan smiled, caressing her cheek. "Always. You are the most important thing to me." Sofia, eyes red, began to step back to give them space, but Jonathan called, "Sofia, stay. You've always been there for my daughter when I couldn't. You're not just an employee, you're part of this family." Sofia couldn't hide her emotion. Emma, through her tears, embraced the two people she loved most. That night, not only did an engagement end, but an entire illusion shattered. Jonathan finally saw clearly. True love wasn't in the rehearsed smile of an opportunist, but in the simple, genuine gestures of those who truly cared. And as he embraced his daughter and the nanny, he knew that for the first time in a long while, his home was filled with truth. The next morning, the mansion felt different. The heavy silence of before was replaced with a new kind: peace. Vanessa was gone, and it was as if even the walls sighed in relief. Jonathan woke early, drank a quick coffee, and went straight to his daughter's room. He opened the door and saw her still asleep, clutching one of her old drawings like a treasure. He stood there for minutes, taking in the serenity on her face. A lump formed in his throat. How many times had he missed the signs she gave? How often had he been too busy to notice the small sorrows hidden in her colorful sketches? He vowed never to let that happen again. Later, in the living room, Sofia was tidying toys on the carpet when Jonathan walked in. She quickly stood up. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. I was going to prepare breakfast for Emma." He gently gestured for her to sit. "Sofia, please sit." She hesitated, then obeyed. "I need to thank you," he said, his voice firm but full of emotion. "Not only for caring for my daughter all these years, but for protecting her when I wasn't here. You are more than a nanny. You are presence, love, and even a voice when she couldn't defend herself." Sofia tried to hide her tears but failed. "I only did what anyone would have done, sir." "No, Sofia." Jonathan shook his head. "Not everyone would have had the courage to stand up to Vanessa. Not everyone would have had the patience to listen to a child's dreams day after day. You've done more than your job. You are family." Those words touched something deep inside her. For years, Sofia had accepted being a quiet shadow. Now she felt seen, valued. Soon after, Emma woke up and ran to the garden, clutching a blank page and her crayons. She sat at the stone table and began to draw. Jonathan watched from afar, eager to see what would appear. When she finished, she brought the paper to Sofia. The drawing showed 3 people holding hands: a smiling child in the middle, a man in a suit on the left, and a modestly dressed woman on the right. Above them, a large red heart embraced all 3. At the bottom, in crooked letters, Emma had written, "My family." Sofia smiled through her tears. The girl smiled too. This one no one can tear apart. Jonathan couldn't hold back. He hugged them both tightly. "You're right, sweetheart. This one is unbreakable." In the days that followed, the house slowly changed. Without Vanessa, the atmosphere was lighter. Jonathan began rearranging his schedule to be more present. He canceled unnecessary trips, reduced evening meetings, and dedicated himself to what truly mattered, his daughter. In the afternoons, he sat beside Emma watching her draw. Sometimes he even tried a few clumsy sketches, making her burst into laughter. "You need a lot more practice, Daddy," she teased, delighted by his clumsy attempts. Sofia remained by their side, no longer a shadow, but a recognized presence. In Jonathan's gaze was respect, in Emma's trust was love, and slowly, an invisible but unbreakable bond tied the three together. One night, while tucking his daughter into bed, Jonathan was asked an unexpected question. "Daddy, will you ever get married again?" He sat on the edge of her bed, smiling. "Maybe someday, sweetheart, but right now, the only thing I care about is being with you." The girl hugged him, satisfied with his answer. "That's perfect then." Her words soothed Jonathan's soul. For the first time in years, he no longer rushed to fill the void in his life. He realized everything he needed was already here. His daughter's unconditional love, and the loyal presence of someone who had always been there. A few weeks later, during a peaceful breakfast, Jonathan looked up and spoke with conviction. "From today on, I promise this house will never again be a place of tears caused by someone unworthy." Emma and Sofia smiled at each other. "Because now I know," he continued, "true wealth isn't in parties, contracts, or titles. True wealth is in protecting those we love, cherishing those who stay even when we are blind." Emma ran to hug him. "I love you, Daddy." Sofia stood there, moved, watching. In that moment, Jonathan understood life had given him a second chance. Not to build a superficial marriage, nor to maintain appearances, but to look inside his own home and recognize the true treasure. His daughter's smile, the nanny's genuine love, and the vow never to let anyone tear apart what was most precious. Holding Emma's and Sofia's hands, he knew he had found his home again. Jonathan had learned a lesson no amount of money could teach. No matter how tall the buildings he built, none would ever be greater than his daughter's heart. No matter how costly an engagement ring, nothing was more valuable than the loyalty of someone who silently stayed, giving love without asking for anything in return. After the storm with Vanessa, life inside the glass mansion slowly returned to peace. Yet beneath that peace, Jonathan began to notice something stirring within himself. Each time he saw Sofia smile at Emma, his heart fluttered. When he heard her reading bedtime stories, her gentle voice reminded him of a warmth he hadn't felt in years. At first, Jonathan tried to deny it. He told himself it was only gratitude, respect for the woman who had stood by his daughter. But soon he realized it was more. He found himself lingering in the kitchen just to hear her laugh, searching for excuses to walk beside her in the garden. When he spoke about his burdens, fears he had buried for years, Sofia's quiet eyes did not judge, only understood. And in that silence, Jonathan felt something he thought he had lost forever, the warmth of being seen. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Jonathan walked into the kitchen where Sofia was tidying up. Hesitantly, he said softly, "Sofia, I think I've let my heart sleep for too long, and perhaps it was your presence that finally woke it." Sofia froze, her eyes wide in disbelief, but in Jonathan's earnest gaze she saw the truth. That night, a new beginning quietly bloomed. Jonathan didn't rush. Patiently, he pursued her, showing that his feelings were real. They began taking Emma to the park together, cooking simple weekend meals, and sharing dinners filled with laughter. Emma soon noticed something different, and she became their greatest cheerleader. "Daddy, I think Sofia is perfect for you." A year later, their love had blossomed into something undeniable. In a sunlit garden adorned with simple white flowers, Jonathan and Sofia stood hand in hand. Their vows were soft but filled with truth. Emma, in a white dress that made her look like a little angel, carried a bouquet and walked proudly down the aisle, her smile wider than anyone else's in the room. When Jonathan held Sofia's hand and spoke his vows, Emma's eyes sparkled with joy. And when the three embraced after the ceremony, no one could doubt it. This was the family they had always longed for. In the smiles and tears of that day, Jonathan realized life had given him a second chance, not to display a perfect family for the world, but to live within a home built on love, sincerity, and trust. The final picture of this story was no longer drawn with crayons. It was three people standing side by side, hands entwined, eyes radiant. A family, simple, steadfast, and bound in happiness that nothing could ever tear apart. And perhaps the question left for each of us is this: if you were in Jonathan's place, what would you have done? Forgive Vanessa or walk away as he did? In the end, this story is not only Jonathan's and Emma's, it is a reminder to us all. The most valuable things are not what we build for others to see, but what we choose to guard in our hearts.